The best part about running this podcast is the opportunities that I get to speak to members of the defense forces of this country. During a week where the country is collectively mourning the loss of General Bipin Rawat and everyone who was with him in that fatal helicopter crash, we got a chance to record this particular episode with Major General G.D. Bakshi, who's given us a fantastic Hindi episode on a Hindi podcast. But this particular one was targeted towards urban audiences primarily. This is the Indian Army's message for Indian youth, for the average Indian citizen. Of course, we spoke about the helicopter crash, but we also spoke about the past, present, and the future of the Indian Army. So, if you're someone like me who enjoys knowing more about the Indian Army, about the defense forces in general, you'll enjoy this episode. Remember, guys, we also have a highlights channel. It's a separate YouTube channel where you'll only find the highlights of this podcast. It's called TRS Clips. Also, remember to follow us on Spotify. TRS is a Spotify exclusive now, which means that every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. This is Major General G.D. Bakshi, who returns on the Ranveer show with a very fiery, very impactful episode. Jai Hind. General Major G.D. Bakshi, sir, welcome back to the Ranveer show. You've given us an absolutely fantastic episode on our Hindi channel. We're very, very honored to have you back on the English show, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Sir, the nation is collectively mourning the loss of 11 of its great sons, including General Bipin Rawat, sir. We even had to postpone the recording of this podcast because of whatever happened this past week. So what's the general sentiment in the Indian Army like? What's happening on ground right now? I know that you knew General Rawat personally, sir. I can't even imagine what you are going through yourself. We'd love to hear what you have to say about the situation.
It has been a monumental national tragedy of massive proportions. We've lost General Bipin Rawat, we've lost the lady, and we've lost, some very brilliant officers on his staff and his guard. His entire entourage went down with that helicopter. There is only one survivor who's battling for his life right now, group captain from the Air Force who was an instructor at the Staff College. It has been a massive tragedy and a great blow. General Bipin Rawat was the chief of the army staff, and he went on to be India's first chief of defense staff. Right? He was a combat soldier. After one assignment after another, he had been in combat. Whether in J&K, 2-3 tenures, he had served as a brigade commander of the RR sector in the valley. Then he was on the Uri, on the line of control, commanding a division. Earlier than that, he has been in a number of other combat assignments. He had served in the northeast, etc. His decorations say it all. Param Vishish Seva Medal, Uttam Yuddha Seva Medal, Ati Vishish Seva Medal, Yuddha Seva Medal, Sena Medal, Vishish Seva Medal. My God, that's quite a chest full of ribbons. Quite a chest full of ribbons, And he was a soldier's soldier. He had been in combat, seen it all, done it all. And I don't think that, it's very right for anybody to aspire to be the chief unless he has had solid, extensive combat experience. He has experienced the fog of war, taking, calls in the fog of war. So he had that all. I was very privileged that I was posted as an instructor in the Indian Military Academy from 1977 to 1980. When, during this period, he was a gentleman cadet at the IMA under training, and I had the privilege to impart him training, and he had earned the Sword of Honor there. He had earned the Sword of Honor there, and we knew he was cut out for great things. because he was, showing very early signs of all that he would achieve subsequently in life. So we had marked him out as, separate from the rest, and it was very satisfying to see the growth, professional growth and rise of one of your students, one of your cadets, as an instructor. It was a great privilege for me. He was a second generation soldier. His father was a general in the army too, a lieutenant general, and he served in the Gurkha Rifles. He was an infantry officer, salt of this earth, etc. Very bright, very brilliant, very future oriented, very much change oriented. You see, a good officer is one who has an aura of creative change around him, So he was brilliant. His going, therefore, is a personal loss. I knew him very well. Even after the academy, his training got over, we kept in touch. Our paths kept crossing at numerous places. When I was commanding a battalion in Kargil, he was in the Military Operations Directorate where I had served previously. He had come with the DGMO to visit my battalion. We had met after ages. And then our paths continued to cross when he was the Vice Chief. When he became the Vice Chief, we met at a function, and then he requested me to sort of come and meet him, and he used to occasionally call me, take my inputs, advice, consult me on various professional issues, take my views. And he was gracious enough. I was now, of course, he was two ranks above me then, and thereafter 4 ranks above me. But he was gracious enough to an old instructor. He would get up from his office chair and come and receive me at the door and take me, sit down and discuss, take notes, and act on them. So we had a very, very, very productive kind of a relationship in which I could put in my 2 pennies worth even after retirement, and it was very, very pleasant to be listened to with so much of attention and regard. He was a man in a hurry. Like I said, he was change-oriented. After he successfully commanded the Indian Army as a chief, and in his time, he launched proactive operations, cross-border operations into Myanmar, and then he was there in chair when the Uri operations went into the surgical strike by our special forces, 2-3 kilometers inside occupied Kashmir. And then, of course, he was there during the Balakot time also. He became the Chief of Defence Staff, India's first Chief of Defence Staff. He has left an indelible impact upon our military acquisition process that was mired, steeped in delays, bureaucratic red tape, just wasting time amounting to nothing, and critical time, because you can't let military acquisition projects languish for decades. Not years, decades. He changed all that. He designed his next job himself, the Chief of Defence Staff job. He was given the powers of a secretary of the Government of India, and that gave him the financial powers to do this. He integrated really the Ministry of Defence with the military. He brought in uniformed soldiers there, opened a military affairs bureau there, and headed that bureau. He worked very closely with the National Security Advisor, Mr. Doval, and he also worked very closely with the Prime Minister, the top of the political establishment. He had their trust and faith and their ear. So he could push through a lot of projects. You see, this whole arms acquisition process he revolutionized. Right? Revolutionized this process. And to the extent that, when China created problems for us last year, within a matter of months he got us 3 squadrons of fighter aircraft, a squadron of Sukhois, 2 squadrons of MiG-29s, and because he was the Chief of Defence Staff, he got in the Navy MiG-29s, moved them up towards Ladakh. So he synergized operation, used Marcos commandos and the others for operations against the Chinese. He got in the Rafales. They came in his time. The S-400 missiles have come in his time. A missile system, a game changer. The assault rifle has come in his time. So he has left an enduring legacy. There was a lot of controversy around him because he was a man in a hurry, very keen to bring about sweeping reforms and changes. Now, there were people who felt, he wanted to integrate the three services. There are 17 different single service headquarters, command level headquarters, right? So he wanted to reduce them to just 4 theater commands. On the American model, on the Chinese model, he wanted to reduce them to 4 theater commands. People were very worried, very frightened that, China is threatening us, Pakistan is threatening us, there is the Taliban in Afghanistan, there Turkey trying to create problems for us, there are the Maoists, there are the jihadis, and all these anti-national elements within the country. So at such a grim national security scenario, should we be creating organizational turbulence of our own? Should we be bringing in such massive across-the-board changes? But he stuck to his gun. He stuck to his guns. And you need great moral courage and willpower to do that in the face of trenchant opposition. And he did that remarkably well. We used to discuss very often. Yes, of course, we had our professional differences, but he was remarkable and he did justice to the job of the Chief of Defence Staff. So that's about General Rawat.
So it's men like this that have built out the great legacy of our army. People who were proactive, people who were patriotic, people who were brave in the face of attacks. People who developed counter-attack strategies. So the one advantage we have as podcasters running our own independent media channels is that we can talk about things that television can never talk about, which is what I want to ask you. I feel like we represent the people. And there has been a lot of public chat on social media about, for lack of a better word, conspiracy theories about this crash. I'd love to know what the army has to say specifically about the crash. Why did it happen? Because there's a lot of research being done about the helicopters used. There's research being done about cybercrime. There are questions being asked about China's role possibly in this. Is any of this true? And is it even fair to bring up these allegations, sir?
Look, the simple fact is that to really answer this question, it would be very prudent and professional to first wait for the outcome of the court of inquiry. The black box, the data recorder, voice recorder, which is installed in every aircraft, and that has the crucial clues to what really happened. Unless you analyze what is there in the data voice recorder, and that black box, as it is called, actually it is painted orange. That has been recovered. There is a air marshal level court of inquiry which has been ordered, the tri-service court of inquiry. They're all going into it as to how exactly it happened. The B-17V is a very sturdy machine. I personally have done 5 heliborne operations and otherwise flown plenty of times in this helicopter. One of my posts was being maintained by B-17 helicopters when I was a brigade commander in Kishtwar. And almost every second week, I used to take flights in that helicopter at Kishtwar, very high altitude mountains and all that. This machine worked beautifully. We did not see a single crash. It's a very sturdy Russian machine, very rugged, very tough, twin engine. So it's not that it was a vintage aircraft. Then it was a VVIP aircraft flown by a very highly qualified selected crew. So I don't think really, of course, we'll have to await the court of inquiry. That technical snag was really the problem. Now, in the mountains, and luckily I have served in Wellington. That is, Kannur is just next door town, right? And I served there for 3.5 years. I know that area backwards. I had my house just overlooking that helipad, So the Nilgiris are not very high, just about 7,000 feet. But it's a very steep climb and it's densely forested, very densely forested. And the weather is very mercurial, like all hill stations. Suddenly, the cloud, it will be bright and shiny and clear, and suddenly the clouds will come up. At least the hilltops would be all obscured. Now, what happens is when you rise, there are two protocols in terms of flight. Either you fly by instrument, or you fly by visual. That means pilot uses his eyes to detect obstacles and avoid collision. Otherwise, if it is souped up from the beginning, you do instrument flying. Instrument flying means your radar tell you, your altimeters tell you how high or low you are, and what is up ahead. If there is an obstruction up ahead, the radar pings you. So when the weather is clear and when they took off from Sulur, that is near Coimbatore, the weather was bright and fine. You know, it's as they started climbing up in those 10 minutes, suddenly the top of the hills were all obscured by clouds. Now, when that happened suddenly, that means he must have been on line of sight, on a flyby visual, kind of a configuration. And I don't think he would have had the time to switch or may not have wanted to switch to instrument flying because it was just, I think, light cloud cover over the hills. But that light cloud cover covers the hilltop. So when the helicopter is coming up and taking a bank over the hill to get to the valley to land at the helipad, then you may miss out some of the tall trees because you can't see them. You just can't see them. And you don't have the instruments to detect them. And there are trees 150 feet tall, I've seen there, 80, 90 feet tall, those jackfruit trees, very tall, you know. So, one theory is that he hit one of the trees and the helicopter crashed instantly. And because the whole area was so densely forested, the fire tenders couldn't reach, the ambulances couldn't reach. It took them a lot of time to get off the road and get there and this thing. So the fire could not be put out in time. The helicopter was carrying fuel for the return journey also. So it was really laden with fuel, high octane fuel, and the moment helicopters crashes, they come down like a stone. And huge fire started. So that if the fire tenders had reached early, possibly we would have been able to save more people. But that didn't happen. Now, there is a second theory because there is a clip going around. There is a video clip going around of some tourists who had seen this helicopter in almost the last moments. And that has been being run on various channels. Firstly, we have to check out the authenticity of those videos. We have to ensure that they were not tampered with, they are not, doctored, and only then can we admit them as evidence. And they must be presented to the court of inquiry so that they can come to more technical, valid conclusions. But there is, in very similar circumstances, I think about 2 years back, a Taiwanese helicopter had crashed, a Black Hawk, again, a very reliable machine, which has been flying since Vietnam days. And the chief of staff of the Taiwanese armed forces, I mean, he was killed in that crash. So there was a lot of speculation that the Chinese had a hand in the either sabotage or perhaps they have developed certain, microwave, kind of instruments which can fry up the circuits. You see, because there is a lot of electronics and computers involved in these aircraft, modern aircraft now, modern helicopters now, so they fry up the circuits. There is another, something in the literature which talks of trying to affect the pilot, his cognitive abilities, either by shining laser into his eyes or, I mean, psychotronic weapons are being talked of, etc., etc. These are all hypothetical theories right now. And we don't know because there have been some very unexplained crashes near the Chinese border. of Su-30s and aircraft like that. So they were being attributed to what China was doing, right?
Got it.
And but right now, it would be very, very wrong to come and jump to a conclusion. Let the facts speak for themselves. There is an official court of inquiry, and I, for one, would wait before I pronounce any kind of judgment. All that I'm saying is no angle should be ruled out because the loss to the country has been enormous. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I think the nation is collectively sharing the same sentiment. And I'm sure there are a lot of army officers who are going to carry on General Rawat's legacy in terms of proactiveness, in terms of something very interesting you said, that he was known for his sense of change and a sense of hastiness. In a modern world where technology is developing so much, everybody knows now that the army actually encounters new technologies before civilians do. So I can't imagine the kind of technological advancements that the army is at the brink of. And I think that's General Rawat's legacy going forward, that the officers who actually enable those technological advancements, they are the people who will be carrying his legacy forward. So
No, quite obviously, you see, because a very senior officer, general, has to be a change agent. Because technological change is moving at such a rapid pace that Alvin Toffler had coined the word future shock. You see, and you can't be shocked by the future. You have to anticipate technology, you have to anticipate military developments and take action well in time. Because equipment cycles are 10 years, 15 years long, acquisition cycles. So, to that extent, it was a very much needed change. But there are people, who have arguments to and from, that how much and at what speed do you induct the change, because change brings in a certain level of organizational turbulence. So when you have a very high threat scenario, is that the right time for massive across the board changes, or do you wait for a lull before you put them in? That was the only question, the point of discussion. But he was very right in his change orientation. It has to change. Things have to change.
So we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the 1971 war, sir. So I'd love to know what you have to say about that war in retrospect, because you were a part of it. Maybe we can begin this question with kind of a bridge from the last section, sir. What do you think really needs to change right now when it comes to the Indian Army? And then you could recollect going 50 years ago. How were things then? How are things different now? How would you like the army to function over the next 25 to 50 years? What legacy would you want the army to carry forward? Maybe 3 sections to this question, sir.
Oh, all right. Let me first start with the 1971 war. Then we'll bring it sequentially forward.
Yes, sir.
The 1971 war, let me be blunt and straightforward, was the greatest military victory India has had in the last 2000 years. Get that right. Greatest military victory after perhaps Chandragupta defeated the Greek satrap Seleucus Nicator in Afghanistan. He made him cede Afghanistan and Baluchistan to India and got a scientifically defensible frontier. In 71, we had a brilliant political and military leadership, and which broke Pakistan in two in a matter of just 13 days. We marched on the capital city of Dhaka. We marched on an enemy capital. We did regime change. We created a new country with a force of arms. 93,000 prisoners of war surrendered, the largest mass surrender after the Second World War. You see, I'm very proud to say, my batch is called the batch Born to Battle batch. Right? And we were to pass out on 14th of December 1971. And we were somewhere in October, clouds of war were gathering swiftly. We were called to the drill square. The adjutant came on his white charger. He said, "Boys, you've done very well. and we are going to commission you a month in advance. We started cheering, wow. 1 month seniority also means a hell of a lot in the armed forces. Every day counts. So, he turned to the assistant adjutant and he said, poor chaps, they don't know what they are in for. He said, why, sir? He says, by the time they get commissioned by November and they join the units would already be in war. They would not have known their men, the men would not have known them, nobody would have had the time to, sort of break them into their new service, new roles. And because they are young, they'll go charging, and a lot of them will maybe lose their lives or suffer. And that is precisely how it happened. 14th of November, we passed out, 10 days to see Mama, Papa, and then we got into the trains, and I, with about 35 course mates, we landed up at Siliguri railway station on the Assam Mail. And that railway station was full of soldiers with steel helmets, bayonets gleaming in the winter sunshine, because Siliguri those days had no, roof cover on the railway siding. So it was such a small little place. And we got off the train, we started hugging one another. We were not sure whether we would again meet, we would again be alive. So that is the time our boys said, "Jaldi karo saab, jaldi karo. Ye pakdo aapka steel helmet, ye pakdo top, ye pakdo aapka Sten machine carbine. Uspe bayonet chadha lo. Kahin kuch bhi ho sakta hai. Paltan to Bangladesh mein." So we said, "Ye saman." He said, "Don't worry about the saman, sab. Wo rear NCO hai, wo le jayega. Aap bas apna pack le lo. Your little blanket and your water bottle, and let's go." So we went. And the very first night of our service, we were in battle, most of us. And I'm also sorry to state that on the very first night of service, we lost a number of our very dear friends and comrades. Some died, some lost their blood, blasted their legs, some blasted their arms, lost their arms. And, our parents back home, in some cases, they got the first pension of their son before they ever got to see his pay. So that was the thing. We took a lot of casualties, but I'm very proud to say we were at the cutting edge of that war when in 13 days we broke Pakistan in two. And that's no mean achievement. We changed the map of the world. We changed the map of South Asia. We marched on an enemy capital. We captured an enemy capital. It was a just war. Pakistan had created genocide and mayhem in Bangladesh. 3 million Bengalis had been killed, 1 million women raped, 10 million Bengalis driven out as refugees into India to shatter our economy. How could we take it lying down? So we had no option but to go to war. It was a just war, and in 13 days we broke Pakistan in two. It's the greatest military victory, like I said, in the last 2,000 years. 3,800 officers, JCO's men, more than that, laid down their lives in that war. But I'm sorry to see that it's not been much remembered in the media, despite it being the 50th anniversary of the war. Hopefully now some events are taking place. But the simple fact is that, had it happened in the United States, had it happened in Russia, by now there would have been 150, 200 films on this war.
That's why we have podcasts, sir.
I know,
we have podcasts
because you are making up that gap in the mainstream media, in the electronic, in the feature films, in the television. They're not covering it as they should be, really. Because a victory of this magnitude, I mean, it's not a small-time victory, not a draw, it's not a stalemate, it's an outright decisive victory. And a tri-service campaign, very well coordinated. I mean, peak of professionalism. Sam Manekshaw, Sam Bahadur, right? We had the Air Chief, Air Marshal P.C. Lal. We had the Navy Chief, Admiral Nanda, whose Navy went and hit the Karachi home port, home base of the Pakistani Navy, sank 6 ships there, and they put that Karachi oil farm on fire so that it burned for a full week, and the black clouds obscured the sun. That was the level of this thing. And the Air Force, they won complete air supremacy over the skies of Bangladesh to enable our armed forces ground forces to move in so fast.
So there isn't question as much as there's gratitude from an entire generation. I really don't think our generation or even Gen Z born after 2000 understands the magnitude of achievement of the Indian Army up till this point to just give us the India that we know. Keeping that in mind, so I think the legacy of the 1971 war for me is positive aggression. That's what has been carried forward. Which what brings me to the present, sir. What is the legacy for you like? Am I right in saying positive aggression? Is it the same for you?
You are not only right, you raised a very, very pertinent point. You see, the problem with Indian military history has been its defensive attitude. Let the enemy come into Panipat, then we will fight. Till then, we will watch Kathak. I mean, it's so disgusting. You let the enemy come in, he burns your villages, burns your cities, destroys your temple, rapes your women, destroys your crops, livestock, and you fight on your own territory? You call that an achievement? It is stupid. So the Gandhian mindset may be very holier than thou, but it is disastrous as far as national defense is concerned. But thank God all that changed. We became proactive. We attacked for a change. But of course, we still waited for the enemy to strike the first blow, and then we gave it back in terms of a just war. We took the war to his enemy territory. We broke Pakistan in two. And we had peace for the next 10 years till Afghanistan started and America started pumping arms into Pakistan again. So it was the greatest thing is more than positive aggression, being proactive, being offensive. An offensive outlook rather than a defensive outlook. Very simply explained. Can you fight just with a shield? You have to have a shield and a sword. India was focusing only on the shield, and therefore we lost every war. From the 10th century onwards till about, the 16th, 17th century, when a military revival of sorts took place under Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj in the south, under Guru Gobind Singh in the north, and under General Lachit Borphukan in Assam. And they destroyed the Mughal Empire. They destroyed the foreign invader. Please don't forget, the British did not free us from the Mughal yoke. We did it. And then we attacked, captured the whole of what is now West Pakistan, went into Afghanistan. Hari Singh Nalwa was the governor of Jalalabad. We had reached up to Kabul. And they are saying no country has ever captured and held Afghanistan. We have. Maharaja Ranjit Singh forces did. The whole of Northwest Frontier Province, the whole of Fata, Shata, etc. is all conquered by whom? By the Sikhs of General Ranjit Singh. So that is in the historical context. So we turned proactive, we turned aggressive, like we have again. In between, we went back to our shell, but now we have turned aggressive again in terms of the fact that we did the surgical strike after Uri. For 30 years, we took it on our chin. Then after Uri, we did the surgical strike in 2016. Then 2019, we did the Balakot air strike to tell Pakistan, nuclear weapons or no bloody nuclear weapons, we will give it back to you in your own territory. You kill one of us here, we'll kill 100 on your side. And that is what has deterred Pakistan quite meaningfully. So that's in answer to your specific query. Yeah.
One last question about the army, sir, before we move into talking about your book. What is the future of the Indian Army according to you, or what needs to change, or what needs to be done more/less according to you, sir?
A little bit of context is required. How did we win the 1971 victory? Russia gave us the cutting-edge military technology, gave us all the weapons we wanted, Su-7 fighter bombers, MiG-21 fighter interceptors, Whatever you wanted, they laid on the table for you. T-54 tanks, T-55 tanks, 130 millimeter artillery guns. I mean, whatever you wanted, they wanted to give you the Tupolev bombers, strategic bombers. We said, no, 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 we don't need them. And then we used AN-12 transport aircraft for bombing in Cham. So they gave you everything, Kashin class destroyer, Foxtrot class submarines, built up your navy, gave you the OSA missile boats, which did miracles in the attack on Karachi, and the army, navy, air force, they strengthened all three wings. And courtesy that, we won the major war. Unfortunately, by 1990, the Soviet Union collapsed. And the main source of supply of Indian cutting edge military technology dried up all of a sudden. There was chaos in the Soviet Union. It became Russia, lost a lot of its empire. And for good about 10 years, we had to stop all military modernization. Don't forget 30 years. Don't forget the fact that in 1990, the Indian economy also came close to collapse. So we were told, just forget about it, buddy. We are in no position to fight. Do what you can with what you have. So even though Pakistan was interfering in Punjab, in J&K, we could do nothing. Just put out the fires within the country. That is all that we could do. Then around, when the 1990 economic reforms of Narasimha Rao and Manmohan Singh, etc., they all started kicking in, and our economy then looked up. Then around 2000 or so, around the time of the Kargil war, we said, yeah, let's now upgrade our armed forces. Because till then we were flying the MiG-21 aircrafts of the 1960 vintage, MiG-23, MiG-27, 60, 70s vintage. They were going on. And by the year 2000, they were all 30-year life cycle. They were all due for obsolescence and being phased out. But we had no money to buy to replace them. So we kept flying the MiG-21. They became the flying coffins, etc. So you still have to phase out this entire 60s, 70s, 80s generation equipment and rebuild a brand new modern army for the next 30, 40 years, Army, Navy, Air Force. This is where we lost 10 crucial years in the UPA regime. They did not buy one bloody fighter aircraft. Our squadron strength, which should be 45 squadrons, is today down to 30 and less. That is criminal. Air power is the war winning factor. You grow weak in the air, you will lose on the ground and in the sea, on the sea. So we need a transformation. Now that transformation has started happening. When the NDA government came, we thought it would be much faster because we had already lost 30 plus years. So then, the Rafale was being talked of for 10 years. Finally, we got it now, two squadrons. So, as I was saying, that entire conversion of our equipment from the 1960s, 70s, 80s era, replacement and bringing in modern fighters, modern tanks, modern technology, modern artillery, modern submarines, etc., all had to be done, and there was a lot of delay, at least a 10 years, 30 years delay as it is because of the economy, then a 10 years delay because of a very warped decision making process, mired in corruption and delays. So it was criminal neglect. And today we are now having to rearm in a very major hurry. Fortunately, our economy is good, it's pretty sound, it can support. We have $650 billion worth of forex reserves. We can do it now. So we are trying to buy from all over. We are trying to diversify. We are trying to buy from Russia. We are buying from Russia as it is 60-70% is from Russia. We are buying a lot of cutting edge technology equipment from the United States, from France, from Israel to catch up in a hurry. What we are trying to do, and which is the way ahead, which comes to your third component of your question, we must indigenize. We must have autarky in the production of weapon systems. You can't have a major superpower aspirant trying to buy all its weapons, cutting edge technology from abroad. People can impose sanctions, people can stop supply of spares and do you a lot of damage. So this Atmanirbhar project has started. And in fact, here Bipin Rawat took a very bold step. He said, we will ban import in certain categories of weapons. 155 millimeter guns. Kalyani Forge in India had built a master gun, which is, the American 155 millimeter medium gun fires 45. This fires 48 kilometers. They fire 3 rounds a minute, ours fires 5 rounds a minute. And yet there were people saying, no, 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 we don't trust Indian technology. It has got this problem, that problem. We'll buy from here, there, everywhere, but India. So he put a blanket list of items which would bloody well have to be purchased from Indian companies, ex-India. We have to shift from the private sector, we have to shift from the public sector, which has become a white elephant and most inefficient, to the private sector. We have to involve our private firms because they are dynamic, they are forward-looking, they can collaborate with other firms in the United States, in Russia, in France, in Japan, in Israel, and produce new equipment of our own designs, our own R&D. That needs to be pushed up. If you ask me which way the armed forces should go, drones have to come in a big way. We have to make our own tanks. We have to make our own jet fighters, our own aircraft. Good news is we started building our Navy. Almost all the ships that we are inducting are Indian, being built in Indian shipyards. We are making our own tanks under license. We made the Arjun on our own. Now we are building nuclear submarines on our own. Right? So we must produce our own drones. We must take the jump to the next level, quantum jump. That has to be done if we want to become a superpower. We are a nuclear power today. So we have to learn how to fight under a nuclear overhang. So we can't take 8 months like we did to prepare in 71 and then go. We'll have to go in at cold start, zero notice. So those are the changes I see, technological. And yet, you can't downsize. There is a new mantra in the army that army is wasting a lot of money. Navy, Air Force are just gobbling up funds. We can spend 1.5 lakh crores to revive sinking banks. But we can't spend money on the army. These people, inka ration kato, ye kato, wo kato, reduce their size. I'm sorry, your threats have never been higher than they are today. You have China, you have Pakistan, you have Taliban in Afghanistan, you have Turkey, you have Maoists, you have jihadists. You have the insurgents in the northeast. Right? So you have the highest threat envelope. At a time like this, I'm sorry, you can't pinch pennies. You will have to spend what it takes. You'll have to get the equipment that you need. And it's best to produce it in India. But where you can't do it, then you just buy from outside. You'll have to get it and get it fast. You don't have 15, 20 years to, we will do it in the next 20 years. The Chinese will not wait. The Pakistanis will not wait. The bloody Turks are trying to get funny. So you have to be ready in the next 2, 3, 4 years. 5 is what you have. And therefore, pull out all stops. Oh, cut manpower, it's a waste of lab. To fight in the mountains, you need manpower. To fight counter-insurgency, counter-terrorists, you need huge manpower. You have no dearth of manpower. You'll only be creating jobs. You have 1.4 billion Indians today. 50% of them are below the age of 25. They need jobs. You're cutting jobs. You understand the anomaly? You need to create jobs. You're saying, cut the jobs that you have. Who needs them? You have to be, futuristic means futuristic in weapon systems. But you have to know what is your condition. You are not America. You don't have to fight global wars. You have to fight wars on your own borders. Maximum you need intervention capabilities, Afghanistan and beyond, little bit Sri Lanka, ocean area, etc. But that's the way to go. Napoleon said, God is always on the side of the big battalions. You have to be big.
Yes, sir.
Don't
Yes, sir.
lose your manpower advantage. This is your biggest advantage even over China. They have an aging
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
population, you have a youthful population. Now you say, we will cut the soldiers from our army, then what the hell will you do? How will you give jobs?
Hmm.
Hmm.
How will
Yes, sir.
you fight the wars in the mountains and the counter-insurgencies which are everywhere? J&K, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram is now over, but also in the heartland, with the Maoist, Gadchiroli and Chhattisgarh, etc., etc. So you have a major challenge coming up. I'd like to end by saying that Arnold Toynbee, the historian, said, "Great powers rise in response to great challenges from the natural or social environment."
The Indian youth, there's a lot of Indian youth watching this particular podcast, and here's what they need to know. Even they can help. There's nothing that stops Indian minds from actually developing Indian technologies which compete at a world stage. So, if there are Indian youth watching this, maybe my personal last message to them would be, rather than going and building your careers in America or Europe or Australia, stay here, help build the country. Let's avoid this brain drain problem.
Absolutely. You see, we have the world-class IITs. Most of their product goes to the United States, and 30% of NASA is Indians, and 30% of Silicon Valley is Indians, and the highest post they are occupying now. You see, but they need to be work here. The public sector wasn't giving them good enough pays. The private sector will. The private sector will. And I just told you the example of Kalyani Forge. Baba Kalyani built the world's best medium gun. And yet there is resistance to accepting it. We are building nuclear submarines. We are building nuclear and conventional submarines. We are building aircraft carriers. We are building fighter jets. Our problem is with engine technology. Engines for our warships, engines for our fighters, engines for our tanks. We are still poor. Collaborate with Japan. They make beautiful engines. Collaborate with the Russians or the French. They make lovely engines. So this is what we will have to go in a very concerted manner. And this is where the Indian youth can contribute majorly. Don't make a beeline for the West.
Yes, sir. I think it's very important for spokespeople of the Indian Army to put the message out for the general population. Maybe we can end this particular episode by talking a little bit about the book you're writing, sir. I also feel a soldier's life is very unique. It's not a normal life. It changes the way you perceive life in general. So, what is this book about? Because it's called Soma. You're talking about psychedelics, you're talking about meditation, all these concepts that are less spoken about in the modern day. So, what's the logic behind the book, sir?
All right. They say, don't tell us, show us. This is the book. This is the book. It's called The Quantum Book of Soma, right? Wow. It delves, and this is a parallel volume. This is called The Songs of Soma, translation of the Vedic hymns into English, transcreations of the Vedic hymns onto Soma into English. This has taken about, this main book, it's taken about 50 years of research. And the topic is something that is surprisingly relevant to the military. The Vedas talk a lot about war. There is the Das Rajan Yudh, the war of the 10 kings. There is the Dwadash Rajan Yudh, the war of the 20 kings. And the war of the 10 kings was almost on the scale of the Mahabharata. 60,000 people are supposed to have been killed in that era. And they possibly use weather warfare and what have you. So, India has always been a warrior civilization. Ramayana is about a war. We have the Mahabharata about a war. And suddenly we are told, oh, we are the most peaceful people on the earth, and we all follow the Lord Buddha. Unfortunately, that religion, there are very few adherents left in India. And yet then we had Gandhi as the next avatar, and he said India is the most pacific civilization. If somebody hits you on one cheek, you must offer the other. You should never kill a fly. You don't mind if your women are raped. Don't mind if your temples are destroyed. Go ahead, bear it. Offer satyagraha. I mean, a country which was invaded from the 10th century onwards till the 18th, non-stop, murderer after murderer, genocide after genocide. And the civilization conclusion that we had come to is Gandhian, that we must be peaceful, we must surrender meekly, we must not fight for our independence, we must beg for it. So that attitude needs to change. You need to go back to the Vedas, which are a virile people. They were a tough people. I mean, they believed Veer Bhogya Vasundhara. We often hear this Vakya, which is called, Ahimsa Parmo Dharma. It is from the Mahabharata. Very few people know that the second part of this is Ahimsa Parmo Dharma, Dharma Hinsa Tathaiva Cha. But Dharma or violence, non-violence is good, is the best, but violence in the protection of Dharma, righteousness, not as in religion, righteousness, justice, right cause, is superior. Dharma, hinsa, tathaiva cha. That part is never told. The British were, after 1857, were shaken up. They never wanted to let India get violent once again and overthrow the British rule. They wanted India peaceful. Unfortunately, Mahatma Gandhi, he was very sincere in his methods, in his beliefs, in his thinking. He was exploited by the British to keep India peaceful. What more did they want? Why did they give him such a high media profile? Because he was keeping India peaceful. So India forgot its roots and moorings. This book is to take you back to your roots, to tell you who you are, what you were capable of, and what we can still do. I'm afraid we can't be monastic and world-denying if we want to become a superpower. We have to be ready to fight to protect ourselves, and to defend ourselves. And not defense by fighting on your own soil only. With an embargo ban on going across, you have to be able to be proactive and cross and hit him in his country. Why should he let him come into our country? So, there is a concept called Soma in the Rig Veda and in all the Vedas, very specifically in the 9th section of the Rig Veda. What is this Soma? The Soma was supposed to make you ecstatic. The Soma was supposed to confer upon you great amount of creativity, insight. And it took away all fear and pain. It took away all fear and pain and made you absolutely invincible on the battlefield. So not only was it required by the rishis and sages and the scholars, it was equally required by the warrior. So what was this Soma? A lot of people felt it was a psychotropic plant. Somlata used to grow on the lower foothills of the Himalayas in western Kashmir, western Tibet, parts of Afghanistan. We call it Soma, the Iranians call it Homa. They pronounced S with an H. We call it the Sindhu, they call it the Hindu. Hapta Hindu, Sapta Sindhu, So they also had this concept of Soma, a psychotropic plant. This concept was there with all the shamans in Siberia, in Alaska, in North America, South America, Australia, Aborigines. They all had a concept of a psychotropic plant of magical qualities. But there is a new research that is now coming up that it was not exogenous. That means it was not something taken from outside. Your own brain secretes neurotransmitters of 3 types. One is called the endorphins and enkephalins. They are the most complex opiates of the brain. They actually give you ecstasy and joy and euphoria. They increase learning abilities and insight. And they take away pain and fear. They are chemicals secreted by the brain, human brain. So if you meditate, you secrete these chemicals. You also secrete dopamine, serotonin, which gives you a high. In battle, when you are scared and you get an inner dose of neurochemicals which give you a high, boy, morale is half the battle won. You go in that war winning attitude. Even when you are shot here, you hardly feel the pain. You keep fighting. Officers refusing to be evacuated under shell and shot. Okay? I'm giving you a revolutionary concept. Now being tested, tried in laboratories in the United States. There is a molecule called DMT, which also gives similar reaction, produced by the brain. Why is it produced? You see, when you do meditation, you shut your eyes. Nature has given you certain species preservation mechanisms. If a caveman was attacked by a tiger, a saber-toothed tiger, did he have legs which could run away from a tiger? And when he had family and kids to protect, could he run away from a tiger? No. He had to stand up and fight. How could he fight a tiger? Pick up a burning log of wood, poke it in his eyes and nose. Pick up a stone, throw it at him. Make spears, make flint stone swords, whatever. Fight that. That is the only way you can stand up and fight and have a chance in hell of surviving. For that you need courage, boy. And where does courage come from? From this Soma. Now, whether it was externally induced Soma, I am inclined to believe, on the basis of my personal experience and what I have understood of the Vedas, that Soma was internal. Soma was endogenous, produced by the human brain and body itself. Gut. The gut also secretes some neurotransmitters. I have a gut feeling. He has guts. You get that? I'm talking scientific fact. And all this research is to give you that scientific fact. I have shown you how the Vedas are not archaic bits of poetry. They are so aligned with quantum mechanics. That is why I am calling it the quantum book of Soma. They are so aligned with cosmology. They are so aligned with neuroscience. What neuroscience is coming to now. The biggest question in modern physics is, what exactly is consciousness? That's called the hard problem. The Vedas attempted to crack this hard problem about 9,000 years from today. That is as per radiocarbon dating, right? Radiocarbon. I'm not talking some stuff from any shaka learned here or there. I'm telling you hard empirical facts. So this is a book that is needed by the scientists, it's needed by our soldiers, it's needed by our scholars, artists who want to be creative. Creativity is the key to any civilization. The Americans are the most innovative, creative people right now.
Yeah, maybe in 5-10 years, hopefully the youth of India today will take that pedestal as being one of the most creative populations of the world. So, but honestly, I feel it's books like these, conversations like these, that kind of initiate that creativity within a teenager's mind, within a college student's mind. So
we need creativity across the board, whether it is an IIT grad doing a startup, whether it is a scientist who's working in the lab, cutting edge fields, whether it is a technology guy making new cars, Elon Musk making an electrical car which runs almost as fast as your petrol car. And you need creativity. Creativity is the key to progress. Building something new, discarding the old, getting to the new. So creativity, how do you enhance creativity? By the process of meditation. By the process of meditation. You secrete those neurotransmitters, that the pleasure pathways and the learning pathways are the same in the human brain. I've done a lot of anatomy study and a lot of neuroscience, latest field study in this have been incorporated in the book so that our people learn. And you see, we have a British era induced habit. Everything Deshi is inferior, no good, useless. It has to be foreign. That's why we all want to emigrate abroad. But in your own lore, the Vedas are your root origin, the source books of your civilization. Today you ask the kids which is the basic book of the Hindus. They'll say it is the Gita. The Gita is one of the Upanishads, which is a derivative of the Vedas. Kids can't name the four Vedas. And then, we are under civilizational attack now, as the Indic religion, the Hindu, Buddhist religions are under attack. How 45 universities got together in the United States to hold a seminar dismantling Hindutva. Very thinly disguised attack, not just on Hindutva, but on Hindus themselves, the Hindu religion itself. So I'm sorry, we don't like to go around converting people or this thing, but now the time has come to defend yourself. That is what is now you see the civilizational churn in India post 2014, is that we will stand up and defend ourselves. At a point in time, the Jews said, we will fight and we will defend. And look where Israel is today. So I think we have to go that path. And that's why this book on Soma, whether you take it as poetry, inspirational poetry, whether you take it as neuroscience, how to enhance creativity, how to increase courage,
Yes, sir.
war winning factor, war winning factor. It links up with all the rest that I have said. Thank you.
General Major G.D. Bakshi, sir, thank you once again for being on the Ranveer show. We salute you. The entire youth salutes the entire Indian Army. We salute General Bipin Rawat, sir, and of course, all the soldiers who lost their lives this past week. Thank you for being on the show, sir. We're looking forward to having you again. Thank you for sharing your knowledge.
Thank you for having me.
That was the episode for today. Before talking about this particular episode from my own perspective, I definitely would like to highlight the TRS Clips YouTube channel once again, because I feel like what the nation needs now, especially the youth of the nation, we need to be educated about multiple subjects in the same way that Major General G.D. Bakshi just highlighted through the course of this episode. The youth of this nation is going to build our nation going forward, and it's very important for its future leaders to know about multiple subjects. Please subscribe to that YouTube channel. It just contains the best bits from every episode. 2 episodes a week. Every episode's released on Spotify 48 hours before it's released anywhere in the world, so make sure you follow us there. As for this episode, it is definitely not the last army episode that we're releasing on this channel. It's my personal duty towards my nation to release these kind of stories, these kind of perspectives to the world of the Indian internet. And yes, while some people might find some of these perspectives a little bit too fiery, it is how it is. And I feel that the perspectives that need to be respected the most in our society are the perspectives of army veterans. They've seen more than most of us, they've experienced more than most of us, they have much stronger insights when it comes to geopolitics, when it comes to national security. These people need to be out there more on the Indian internet. I'd like to end this particular episode by addressing members of the defense forces who are listening to this podcast till this point. Please reach out, help us create even more episodes. Our goal is to create at least one episode with a member of the Navy, the Air Force, or the Army every month. We're doing 2 English podcasts, 1 Hindi podcast. We want to celebrate the defense forces even more on the Indian internet. So please reach out if you're listening in till this point. The Indian youth does want to learn from the defense forces. The Indian youth does want to help build the country. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.